Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Siti Walila. I'm from TBI1 with ID number T2019 60 and 19. And now I will explain about the input hypothesis. Definition of input hypothesis. This stage that learners progress in their knowledge of the language when they comprehend language input that is likely more advanced than their current level. Krashen called this level of input I plus 1, where I is the learner's interlanguage and plus 1 is the next stage of language acquisition. Next is 4 parts of input hypothesis. First, the input hypothesis relates to acquisition, not learning. The second, we acquire by understanding language that contains structure is beyond of our current level competence. I plus 1. This is done with the help of context or extra linguistic information. So what is the meaning of first part and second part? Let me explain. Let us first start the question of how we acquire. How do we move from one stage to another? How do we move from stage I, where I represent current competence, to I plus 1, the next level? The input hypothesis makes the following claim. A necessary but not sufficient condition to move from stage I to stage I plus 1 is that the acquirer understand input that contains I plus 1, where understand means that the acquirer is focused on the meaning and not the form of the message. We acquire, in other words, only when we understand language that contains structure that is a little beyond. Where are we now? How is this possible? How can we understand language that contains structure that we have not yet acquired? The answer to this apparent paradox is that we use more than our linguistic competence to help us understand. We also use context, our knowledge of the world, our extra-linguistic information to help us understand language directed at us. Okay, next is the third. When communication is successful, when the input is understood and there is enough of it, I plus 1 will be provided automatically. What that means? Let me explain. A third part of the input hypothesis says that input must contain I plus 1 to be useful for language acquisition. But it need not contain only I plus 1. It says that if the acquirer understands the input and there is enough of it, I plus 1 will automatically be provided. In other words, if communication is successful, I plus 1 is provided. As we will discuss later, this implies that the best input should not even attempt to deliberately aim at I plus 1. We are all familiar with the syllabi that try to deliberately cover I plus 1. There is a structure of the day, and usually both teacher and student feel that the aim of the lesson is to teach or practice a specific grammatical item or structure. Once this structure is mastered, the syllabus process to the next one. This part of the input hypothesis implies that such a deliberate attempt to provide I plus 1 is not necessary. As we shall see later, there are reasons to suspect that it may even be harmful. Next is fourth. Production ability emerges is not taught directly. So what it means? The final part of the input hypothesis stage that speaking fluency cannot be taught directly. Rather, it emerges over time on its own for the best way, and perhaps the only way, to teach speaking according to this view is simple: to provide comprehensible input. Early speech will come when the acquirer feels ready. This stage of readiness arrives somewhat different times for different people. However, early speech, moreover, is typically not grammatically accurate. Accuracy develops over time as the acquirer hears and understands more input. I think it's all from me. Hi, I hope you will understand. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.